Always a pleasure to welcome our Daily Faceoff prospect analyst, Steven Ellis, into the show. And we're getting close to the quarter-way point of the season, which means Steven Ellis has updated his 2025 NHL draft rankings. And I want to start at the top and flash up your new top five, Steven. And basically, just when you look at this top five, two questions. How does it relate to past year's top fives? Is it stronger, weaker? And is there a significant tier drop-off anywhere in here? Or is a top five pick maybe a little bit more even than past years?
This is feeling like a overall kind of a below average draft, especially after two really good ones. Like James Higgins is awesome. Like when you compare him to an NHL player, Jack Hughes is probably the best bet. You got Porter Martone, that's kind of like a Matthew Tkachuk. Michael Misa is obviously scoring at an incredible rate right now, which is going to be one of the most productive seasons we've ever seen. Matthew Schaefer is the top prospect or top defenseman. But then it starts to kind of fall off there. It feels like there's too many players who just don't want to be drafted high. Roger McQueen's out right now long-term with an injury. Anton Frendel just had, I think, his third injury of the season already. Then you look at a guy that I mentioned early in the season, Ivan Ryabkin out of Russia, has just fallen off a cliff completely. So it feels like we're at a point where players are just doing their best to hurt their draft stock more than the other way around. Like last year, felt like we noticed a lot more players pushing themselves up. We're not seeing that right now.
Okay, so in that same vein, then, which highly ranked prospect to this point, Steven, has fallen the most on your board?
It's, there's so many different ones here. Obviously, Anton Frendel is kind of just too many injuries there. But for me, it's got to be Ivan Ryabkin out of Russia, a player who it looked like he was going to go play in the USHL. It seems like that's not happening anymore. You look at the production here. This is one of the most productive players in Russian junior hockey history in the MHL. It seemed like, okay, after years of watching Demidov and Michkov, we've got another one. It's going to be great. And he's just not at all coming close to what we kind of expected him to do. He's not producing. You see here, hasn't scored. We've seen him get benched in both the VHL, which is the Russian second tier league, but then also in the Russian junior league, which is not a good sign. He just looks lazy out there. And it's too bad because when he's out there producing, he's got a lot of talent. He's got a great shot. He can drive the net. It's just not coming on a consistent basis, at least not to the level of other top Russian prospects. So a guy that a lot of people pegged as a top 5 prospect heading into the season, I don't have him in my top 10 anymore.
Okay, so give me the inverse of that. Give me a guy that was a little bit lower that's been a steady riser on the projected draft rankings.
So I had Ryabkin at number 11. My next one, but the guy that's right behind him is Lyndon Lakovic out of Moose Jaw, a really big guy who's, I think he's 6'4". You look at those numbers there, he's well over a point per game already. And it feels like we're getting a lot more of these really big forwards, specifically centermen in the WHL. You look at last year, all the talk about some of the guys out there. Now we've got Lyndon Lakovic, who can play center, he can play wing. We've got Roger McQueen, who I mentioned earlier. When it comes to Lakovic, he's on pace for something like 85 points this year. He's a key piece of that Warriors attack, which Moose Jaw, they were just in the Memorial Cup. So a lot of their key players have already moved on and they've kind of developed and they're in a rebuild right now. But it doesn't seem like he's having any issue producing right now, which is good. Some games he'll go out there and get 10 shots. The next game he'll go out there and get 3 or 4. Bit of fluctuation there, but he is a play driver for that team. And I think he's someone who maybe was a borderline first rounder heading into the season. Now he's definitely a top 15 prospect.
Wow. Last name I wanted to throw your way. It's a guy we were chatting about before the show a little bit, but he's driving some serious discussion, and it's Haoxi Wang. He also goes by Simon, but he's from Beijing, I believe. Steven, tell me a bit more about what makes him so intriguing, and my scouts are flocking to watch him.
Yeah, I went to see him play a couple weeks ago in Nobleton, Ontario, kind of outside of the farmlands, not a huge hockey market. And it was a pretty solid crowd for this Sunday afternoon game. And I think there were something like 26 NHL teams represented to watch a player in the OJHL. For reference, a lot of the top talent that typically would have gone to the OJHL in recent years have gone either to the USHL or to the BCHL. Now, obviously, everything that's going to be happening here with the college eligibility rules, that's going to probably change. We'll see. But with Wang, we know that there is some interest about him playing in either the OHL or the USHL. So we will see. But he's 6'6". He hits like a tank. He defends very well and he shoots like a missile every time. So, yeah, he's playing in the OJHL, not the highest level of hockey, definitely a big step down from the OHL, but the stuff that we're seeing there's so many translatable skills and that size and that defensive awareness. Teams are really excited about him. So it seems like every time that he plays, at least recently, there's a minimum of 15 scouts watching him in person. And I do think he's someone who could put himself on the first round conversation.
So can you just explain for me how we get Simon and Haoxi? How is that like Arbor Jacki and Wi-Fi? Like, how does that work?
It's the name he goes by here, but it is kind of funny. In the OJHL, there is another Simon Wang, and for a while, their stats were like completely mixed up. So trying to figure out who was the good one was a bit confusing, but it became very clear that this one is definitely the guy you should be looking at.
Interesting. Steven, as always, appreciate your time. Full 2025 draft rankings going up at dailyfaceoff.com. So look for it there, and we'll chat with you again next week.
Yep. Thanks so much.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.